Hello and welcome guys to a very interesting video. Well, I find it interesting and I hope you do too, but a video all about statistics. All the numbers of Broken Arrow are actually available to view, but stats are shipped off to websites like BA Armory, so barmory.com. I'll just quickly show you their front page. Here we are. And if you're a premium member, which, well, I am, here you go. You can analyze this in a lot of detail. Now, this is the weekly. Here's the monthly. The monthly is a bit out of date because it is obviously complete for February. So we'll access weekly because this is the last of the pre-Baltic statistics. And essentially what we're going to do is review how the game has changed or how the previous updates and the previous 6 months of a lack of updates have affected the game. Now, obviously stuff like, there's a lot of public statistics by the way, so stuff like the Russia-America win rate is on the game. Wait, hold on, is that okay? Well, today's Russia's win rate is higher, which is crazy to imagine. I'm not too sure how the hell that's happened, considering historically there's been a big gap ever since the most recent update that came out on the 10th month, which is of course October. Right, okay, so as we've seen, this is all public stuff, Everybody knows that the numbers have actually been climbing, by the way, so the game is getting more popular as the Baltics, and as some YouTubers who shall remain nameless have been leaking some information. Who would do such a thing? But there we go. There's the specializations as well. We can just do a quick chart. American usage has been steady, falling a little bit, but yeah. There's stats for all the specializations. Like I said, you can all view this in your spare time because this is public and free. The stuff I want to talk about is the reports that Balmery like to do. This is really cool stuff. First of all, here's the ELO distribution. I'm actually quite surprised at how much of a cliff edge it is after 2300 ELO, which is right here. That's sort of the area that I'm in. Obviously, I oscillate left and right quite a bit, but I'm essentially in this bracket, in this sort of rough area right there. There is quite a lot of players on the 2000 border, obviously very, very few players out there, and these are the numbers for the matches as well. So in a given week of Broken Arrow, you can expect, what's the total? 22,000 matches with 33,000 different players. Interesting stuff right there. Over the month, obviously these numbers are much, much bigger. But what's very interesting to me is this unit tab. So this is the global use of units and obviously their cost. So numbers deployed doesn't really tell us too much because obviously, well, you know, we always need supply. I prefer the overall cost spent on the units because I think that tells us a much bigger story. So overall in the game, I think it's very interesting to see that per price, the Bookers is the most used and sort of, hold on, that's not per price actually. Well, let's have a look at the win rates then, shall we? Uh, okay, that doesn't seem like that's, okay, maybe that's something that needs to be worked on because that can't be accurate. But, okay, that's kind of thrown me a little bit. Let's have a look at the units deployed overall. So, the Ural is the most popular unit in the game across all the ELOs, but here's another super cool, interesting feature. If you scale the ELO, you can see that, okay, that does not change, but the Airborne does. So basically the higher ELO bracketed players, so actually if we stick it up to the elite sort of sector, as we do here, then are we surprised that the Ural and the Marines and the Hermit are the most spammed units? Absolutely not. We see there's a big reduction in the Bookers actually, and a big reduction in the ISV because that drops down to the 9th place there. So that is also a very interesting thing. The reason I like to do it for the cost factor taken into account is the simple fact is that obviously expensive units like this should potentially be spammed out less because of the price difference. Cheap units, for example, like the Marines in comparison to those, you'd see a lot more squads on the battlefield. In general, you'd expect to see a lot more infantry pointed out. Therefore, taking into the account the cost, for me, I think is very interesting. So here we look at the global as well. So the global increase in usage again. So it turns out the top players, the top ELO bracketed players, they really do like to use the Sex Eagle and the Tornadoes. And I've seen that myself. I think it is a bit of a disappointing statistic overall. Unfortunately, these are very spammy, and you just use them all game. I do not like the arty support sort of playstyle. The bugger still features quite highly, which is interesting. Actually, let's put minimum match count 100. Maybe that'll affect the stats a little bit. Okay, maybe, especially when we do this again. Aha, there we go. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to achieve. So there must have been some sort of bug where, yeah. So there we go. ACVP, the most spammed out unit. So when it comes to factions, there's no surprise that Marines are super popular. The Comanche, Paravet. I mean, yeah, we're always talking about the American units. GRU with the Verba anti-aircraft, so double. That's what I like to use, by the way. Is a very popular thing to use as well. The Pack 3 MSE, no surprises there either. So if you want a high win rate, spam out your Marines, spam out your Special Forces. A bit of MLRS, never hurt nobody. For Russia, the opposite is true. You want your motorized specialization right there. But yeah, look at all these units. It is just predominantly America that has the really, really super high win rate of usage, which is really, really interesting to see. Yeah, that's very high. And that is a global thing, so that's for all ELOs. Again, if we bump that up to the higher sort of section of players, the stats don't really change much at all. So there we go. What else can I show you guys on here? The most used unit, there we go, Comanche Hornet. That is a bit surprising. And what is also very surprising to me is the T80 with this upgrade. Now, I like the T80s when they're super cheap. So, for example, what the hell is the PDSS doing there? That is the biggest surprise to me, that that's got such a high win rate for being spawned out. Very bizarre indeed. Corsair I can get behind. The Buratino, okay, yeah, Abrams. Okay, that's actually very much surprised me for the top elo players. So if you want to win as, if you want to improve your game, this is definitely something that you should listen to. These sorts of stats are quite important. Here's another really cool thing that you can look at. So the category of infantry that is most spawned out. I think there's no surprises that in the numbers game, that infantry is going to be up there, followed by vehicles. Again, no surprises whatsoever, followed by support. Cool. When it takes into account cost, this is a bit more surprising that infantry is still super heavily dominant, as well as vehicles. I was actually expecting support to be higher, but let's bump the elo up again and see how much that changes. Wow, yeah, obviously massively favoring the American faction there for deployment rate, but yeah, okay, fair enough. I was expecting a lot more support in that tab, but okay, I guess maybe just this week people are growing wise to the abundance of what the abundance of support can do to you. Obviously, can actually help you quite a lot, and yeah, achieve an over 50% win rate for the Russians there. In terms of looking at the weekly and the units again, if we just put it in sort of the mid-tier players, again, no discrimination, of course, nothing against you for being mid-tier player, but this is sort of what the 80% of the player base is doing. So the Bookers is obviously still very, very dominant here, especially when we take into account the cost. Again, American units overall are spawned in more. I wish you could do like no mirror matches only. That would be a nice filter as well if it's possible, but unfortunately we can't. So yeah, a lot of American units. F-16 Nuke is up there, which is a very surprising thing. The Sentinel, I expected to actually be higher, but I feel like people are sort of getting tired of using that because it is a bit OP, but whatever. S-300. Now, S-300 does not have a positive win rate. Actually, neither does the Sentinel. Very surprising. And neither does the Ural, even though that is the most spawned unit. That is very, very surprising stats right there. What goes on in those mid-level games, I'm not really too sure. Sturm, that is the first Russian unit with a positive win rate, with the highest win rate, so obviously maybe this is something for you to consider. 45 points, very, very good unit indeed. Very easy and cheap to spam out. The M28, Mikhailich, okay. Reason it does so well, I think, is because people don't really expect it to be in the AA configuration. Most people consider it to be, well, expect it to be with Limas. So especially for the price, it does trade really, really well. Two of these will beat 4 killer eggs with an AA loadout. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Prowler SU-24. Everyone loves the SU-24 clusters fuel tanks. No, put some fire bombs on it. But I see, actually, for the price, it makes sense to put fuel tanks. Fair enough. Patriot for 120 points. Something to bear in mind. Clearly, it is a winning strategy. Definitely looks good there. Killer eggs, no surprises. Lots of American units. K16. Okay, not a chance in hell would you ever want to run it with a machine gun and Afghanit. I really don't know what's going on there. This is some random stuff going on. Okay, let's just change it back up to here where the stats are a bit more predictable. Okay, more surprising stuff that the SU-2057 with the smart clusters is actually a really good unit. Obviously, the SU-57 can self-blaze. I thought that'd be a bit expensive, but clearly they're doing something right here. Raptor with the JDAM. Okay. Again, surprising stuff. I expected GBUs on there because they are cheap. Oh, no, it's the same price, isn't it? I'm not too sure. King Stallion is used quite a lot. Honestly, guys, I'm really not sure. Sometimes these stats really don't make sense to me. This probably is more logical. Anyway, that is it. That is it. There's not much else to say. I think these reports are super interesting, especially when you consider the sort of the things that the best players are doing, the pros, if you will. Really, really good stats. I think if you want to improve your game, then consider becoming a patron for Barmery. Of course, become a patron for me too. I wouldn't complain if you did. But when you analyze these things, I think it does help you become a better player. So definitely worth it. Anyway, that's all from me. Lots of information here, lots to digest. Again, if you want to check out the public tools, then it is over here. Feel free to scour that in your own time. But otherwise, that's it from me. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.